Call me when you want. Call me when you need.
Call me in the morning. That song has been stuck in my head. It's so good.
It is a good song.
It's such a good song. I don't think we would be having this big of a controversy if it wasn't such a good song. Like, it's so catchy.
Because, like, I don't know, it's like, yeah, he fucked Satan, but, like, is that the worst thing that has ever happened in a music video? All the conservatives freaked out about it.
I know. Like, and the funny thing is, when I watched it the first time, I was like, wow, this is cool. And I didn't even think about it being offensive, like, in any way. And then people were like, oh, conservatives are panicking. And I was like, well, they always do that. So, and I'm like, what do they even have to be upset about? Like, they say gay people go to hell.
I'm Jen.
I'm Liz.
And we're Harmless Harlots.
What does that mean?
To us, it means being open to having more than one relationship, however you define it, as long as everyone gives fully informed, enthusiastic consent.
It's also an homage to our Poly Bible, The Ethical Slut, which we recommend if you want to learn more.
We are enthusiasts, not experts, in this field, so if you want to learn and explore along with us, we give you our knowing, enthusiastic consent to come along. Anyway, so yesterday I called one of my friends from Barcelona. I was talking with her. Okay, so here's the background. So my friend group was made up of me, 2 affirmed lesbians, and 3 straight girls, or so I thought was what we said at the time, because I feel like we discuss sexuality a lot. But so me and one of the supposedly straight girls, me and Minnie were very close and very snuggly. But I thought she was straight, which maybe she wasn't. Maybe she expressed to me, or maybe she was, and she just didn't express it to me. But we were very cuddly, but never anything happened. And also at the time, she had a boyfriend that like I knew of, and before then, I really wasn't. Well, I guess I didn't know I was poly or wasn't identifying as poly. I didn't really understand polyamory. So I was like, well, she has a boyfriend and she's straight, so whatever. So I called her yesterday, and we were talking. And she was like, yeah, so I'm at school and I'm living in this house with like 10 other people. And yeah, we're kind of known as the bi house. And like, there's only 2 guys living here. And I was like, interesting. Because like, she had never obviously been like queer phobic because our group was very queer. But like, she also, to my memory, I thought had said she was straight. But so she was like, yeah, this is like the bi house. And I'm like, okay, cool. And she was like, yeah, and I have like a, like a 60% lover living in the house. And I'm like, oh, interesting. And she's like, yeah, her name is Amanda. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, curious then, is like your boyfriend still a thing? And she was like, well, we kind of just like stopped being a thing when the pandemic hit because we, got like separated. But like I still love him, but like I'm, fucking around with this girl, but she also has another person who she loves. And I was like, that sounds kind of like this thing I've heard of called polyamory. And she's like,
that I've heard of.
I didn't know
that I've heard of briefly.
I didn't know how to bring it up. And she was like, no, yeah, it is. And I was like, okay. So if she had been, or at least expressed to me, or maybe I'm just oblivious, which would not be off-brand, but, if I had been aware of that.
It would not be off-brand at all for you to be oblivious.
So if I had known that when we were in Barcelona, things would have gone differently. But alas, it was not. But anyway, so that was...
She also may not have identified that way. Did I ever tell you the story about how I realized I was not straight?
Maybe, but refresh me.
So it was when I went to summer camp. And it was definitely a nerd camp. I mean, it was a nerd camp, but we didn't do like a ton of academic stuff. So you picked your program, and there were programs that were more nerdy and academically focused, but the program we kind of by accident ended up in was like, I'm not going to say it was a joke, but it was not a lot of work. So we had a lot of free time, and it was a bunch of, horny juniors in high school. So there was this girl at the summer camp, Kylie, and Kylie was not a fair girl to expose me to if you expected me to remain straight, is all I'm going to say. Kylie was gorgeous. Kylie models now. Like, Kylie is just like next level. goddamn beautiful. Like, if you wanted Lizzie to stay straight, you should not have shown Kylie to Lizzie, because that's not fair.
Have you seen the TikToks where it's like when the devil can't reach you, but they send you like a straight best
Yeah.
friend? It's
Yep.
like,
Yep. Yep. That's what it was. So Kylie also had a boyfriend at the time, but Kylie would all the time be like, "Oh, if I didn't have a boyfriend, I would really want to kiss you. Wouldn't that be so funny if we kissed?" And I was like, "Ha ha, ha ha. That'd be so funny. Hello, 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 hello. I'm ruffling. Yes, that would be hilarious." And she was always like, she would like change clothes in front of me and like do it on purpose, and like she would snuggle with me and like play with my hair and like kiss my face but not my lips, because that would be cheating in her book. And it was a whole thing. So yeah, by the end of that 2-week summer camp, when I came home, that was when I told Mom. I was like, "Hey, I think I might like girls." And I don't remember exactly what Mom said. It was something along the lines of like, "Oh, that's just a phase or something." Which, to be fair, at the time, it was like, yeah, I mean, it could be. Like, this is just one girl that I found very attractive, so it's entirely possible.
very typical mom reaction.
Yeah. I was like, it's possible it's a phase. I don't know. But then I continued living life, and I was like, no, no, I'm not straight. And here we are.
When you said that story, that just reminded me, when I was in Barcelona, I went salsa dancing like all the time because I love dancing.
I remember, yeah.
I did it probably in an unsafe fashion because I would go out
You
by
did.
myself
There were
in
several
a
times I
foreign
yelled at
city
you.
by myself and
Mm-hmm.
dance with strange men. Anyways, moving on. But so I took Minnie and then one of the other girls one night, and we were dancing. And at one point in the night, Minnie like cups my face in her hand, and she's like, "If I was a boy, I would definitely fall in love with you."
You told me this story. I remember you telling me this story, and I was like, "Jen, that girl's not straight. Like, she doesn't need to be a boy to kiss you. She could just do it."
Okay,
Like,
yes, but well, so I told that to one of the lesbians in the group, and she was like, she said the same thing. She was like, she knows she doesn't have to be a boy. So I'm
you know that's not a rule, right? Like, that's not a
guessing.
rule. You can just do it. It's
Well, I'm
fine.
guessing she similarly, though maybe not as drastically, or just later, like went through a very queer transformation after our Barcelona days. But so, if ever Minnie and I meet up in the same geographical location again, who knows? But yeah, I totally forgot about that until you said that Kylie story.
The internalized homophobia is so
It really
real.
is.
It's so real.
And like one day, like very, very at the end of the semester in Barcelona, they have a bunch of like Christmas markets, which are like just outside markets that sell Christmas things and all the traditional stuff. Just the two of us went, and we were walking around, and we were just like holding hands and just like walking through this market. Yeah, I know.
When I was studying abroad, I met Taylor, who at the time identified as a woman and presented as very feminine, but had very short hair, and Taylor is obviously a gender neutral name. So, this is the story of how I kind of sort of came out to Dad. Taylor and I went to Vienna together. We weren't studying abroad in Vienna, but we just went on the trip. And Vienna, I don't know if you're aware of this, but is a very gay friendly city. We didn't know that when we went, but we found out they have crosswalks that are like two women holding hands and two men holding hands for like the walk sign and the stop sign. And they have like rainbows every. It was very, very supportive and queer. And Taylor and I both were not straight. So we took a couple of photos of us around the city kissing. We didn't hook up. We weren't like super attracted to each other, but like kissing your friends is fun. I also just kiss my friends casually. Like, it's not a big deal. I don't know. I
Agreed.
like kissing. They like kissing. It's fine.
Yes.
Anyway, so Taylor and I took some photos around the city with these gay symbols, kissing in front of them. And I don't know if you remember this, but I sent you a photo of Taylor and I kissing, and you opened it, and Dad happened to be next to you when you opened the photo. And you told me that. You said, like, I opened the photo, and you were like, "Oh, Dad saw this." And I was like, "Oh, well, it's not obvious that Taylor is a woman, so he probably doesn't quite know that, but whatever." And I don't think we ever addressed it more than that. So, like, a year later, after I was back home, I was just hanging out talking to Dad. And I said to Dad, I was like, "Dad, do you remember like a year ago when I sent that picture from Vienna and I was kissing Taylor?" And he was like, "Yeah, I remember seeing that photo." And I was like, "Well, Taylor was a girl." And he was like, "Oh, well, I've kissed boys before too." And I was like, "What? You like who, wait, what?" And he was like, yeah, like you're brothers. And I was like, oh, no, Dad, no, this wasn't like that. That's a different, no, I'm trying to tell you a different thing. uh, and I don't remember if we talked more after that. He definitely knows now that I'm not straight, but it was kind of a failed attempt of coming out to him.
Well, I have a very similar story where this last semester in the fall, I don't know, like I've never talked with Dad in depth about my gender or sexuality, but he also like he knows my hair is short and that I don't shave, and I'm sure he knows things. I don't know exactly what he knows, but it was last semester and we did Sunday dinners at home with like me and my friends and then our family. And at one point, Joe said something about the like a book in the Percy Jackson realm. There's like 20 of them now. And he was talking about like the queer characters in them. And I was like, Joey, why didn't you like tell me? And he was like, oh, I'm sorry. And I was like, well, you should tell me whenever you know, read queer books or anything. And I just said that at the table. And then right after I said it, it was kind of quiet. And I was like, I don't know if I've ever said stuff like that in front of Dad. So that was interesting.
Yeah. I think that's kind of how Dad's learned a lot of things, because we're both very open with Mom, and Mom knows everything. I don't remember when I stopped telling Dad stuff or exactly why I stopped telling Dad stuff. But Dad definitely does not know as much stuff, and there have been many instances where I've like said stuff and then realized I don't think Dad knew that until right now. Okay, cool.
I was wondering because the fam dropped by last week, right? And you were talking about having them maybe record the podcast with us, and I said, does Dad know about the podcast? So did you bring it up, and
yeah,
what did you say?
Mom asked that too. So I asked, I can't remember if Dad was present, but I definitely asked. I was like, if you guys want to be on the podcast, and they were like, oh, we don't have time. And then Mom asked me later, she was like, I don't know if your dad knows about the podcast. And I was like, I didn't think about that. Yeah, I don't know if he knows either.
But I was also wondering, when did we tell Mom about the podcast?
I don't know. I talk to Mom all the dang time.
Yeah.
You are terrible about remembering to call Mom and tell her things, and the rest of us.
Better, maybe?
You are so bad. You're better than you used to be, but you're so bad at updating us on your lives.
On my multiple lives. I am not only polyamorous, I am polyvivacious. I have many lives, souls, I contain multitudes.
Many lives I live. I'm a cat. There's 9 of them. No, but I call Mom like several times a week at least, every day sometimes, but I tell Mom like everything about life, so I'm sure pretty early on in recording the podcast I just like mentioned it to her. But is probably how she found out.
But I guess it just had me thinking, like, was that how we came out to Mom about being poly, or had I talked about it earlier? Like, I don't remember. Like, I don't come out to people, I just am it so much that people see. Like, it's just impossible not to know.
So this is what I call small town syndrome, where you and I grew up in a small town where everybody knew all of our shit all the time. We didn't have to tell people. Everybody just knew. It was a small town.
That's fair.
And I, in my life, have also had that problem where, like, when something happens, I assume everybody knows, because in a small town, that's how it works. Everybody just knows. And they don't know. And so, you know, you'll be talking about something and people are like, wait, what? And you're like, oh yeah, you didn't know everything about my life? I assume everyone knows everything about my life all the time, because that is how small towns work. But they do not.
Well, you say that, but you were also only in the small town for 2 years.
Yeah. I think I do it more so because I post on social media a lot. Like a lot, like probably more than I should, but I post on social media a lot, and I say a lot about my life, so typically I'm just like, I posted on social media, it counts as telling people. Everyone has to know. If they do not know, it is not my fault. I put it out there. Like, this counts.
Yeah, but no, that's why I'm so bad about telling our parents and just anybody about things that happen in my life. But that also made me think when you talked about how you came out to Mom with your sexuality, and that reminded me how, you know, I've probably talked about, like, when I stopped shaving, Mother was not my most supportive fan, but now she like doesn't shave her legs anymore.
She wanted to protect you. She didn't want you to face adversity.
I know it comes from a good place, but it also just, like anytime we've ever like come out to Mom, it's always been like maybe mild like reaction, but then also like she's fine with it later. But like I don't remember her ever like, and maybe just because I got into it, but I feel like I've been into it for a while, because like I don't remember her ever having like a negative reaction to it. Like, have you had conversations with, like, I know you tell Mom about your life, so she knows your lifestyle, but like, has she ever mentioned anything like negative about polyamory? Because like she also listens to this podcast. I don't know. I've just been thinking about it lately.
I don't know. See, that's the mom's reaction to me being poly was what I expected most people's to be, right? Because, like, I've been doing polyamory for forever, you know? Like, in college, I always had like two or three boys at my beck and call. Like, that was just who I was. And I think mom did a lot of monogamous relationships growing up, but I
But
think
mom
if
was a player.
polyamory was more, mom was a
She would
player.
have
No,
been a
mad respect to
yeah,
mom. Like,
no,
our
mom
mom
was a
crushed
fucking
it.
baller.
Like, she really was. Like, honestly, I think part of why mom is not like so taken aback by this is because if it was acceptable, mom would have pulled so many men back in the day. Like, mom would have been the polyamory
Yeah,
queen.
no.
Like, mom pulled
Mom
men
was a
like none
beast.
other.
Mom, okay, the reason we're saying this is because Mother never got dumped. Mother was always the
She did
dumper.
not. She did not ever in her life. She might fact check us on that, but I don't think she ever did get dumped. She was a heartbreaker. Our mother was.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
yeah. Anyway. So mom had the reaction that I thought most other people were going to have in that she was like, "Yeah, you've been doing this the whole time. It's not shocking. Like, of course, it's fine." Yeah, I don't yeah,
No
she was
one
just
is
like, well, and
surprised.
especially because like she knew I was, you know, sleeping with and having sleeping with, but also like I have good relationships with. It's hard to put labels on them. She knew that both Zach and Rick were my lovers for a long period of time before we started identifying as polyamorous. So like it wasn't identifying this way for me didn't present any sort of lifestyle change because I already had two lovers. So she was like, yeah, this doesn't change anything. You're already seeing two men. Like, okay.
I did reading or no, I was in my relationship section today and some girl did a presentation on first dates and we started talking about who pays on dates. And I've never super really been on a date, so
Mm,
I was wondering in your experience what kind
hello.
of your philosophy is.
All right. So first of all, in every interaction, consent is key because honestly, I don't care what you do, but if you do it in a demanding way, you're wrong. Like if you insist on you paying everything, if you insist on splitting, if you insist on the other person paying, if you insist on anything, you're wrong. Like whatever you do needs to be like you both agree on what you do. I found it works better when people talk about it ahead of time, but sometimes those conversations can be kind of awkward to have. In my experience, what I've typically liked to do is each person just pays for their own shit because, like, it's just easier that way. Like, there's no hurt feelings. Everybody pays for what they get. So that's what I've tended to do most of the time. I have had men who have said they prefer to pay. I don't love that because I know that it's rooted in the patriarchy, but also I get free shit. So, like, if a man is like, I would prefer to pay for the meal, I will usually be like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Like, I'll let you do that. That's cool. I've also offered to pay for meals before, and I've had guys say yes. I've had guys say no. You just go with whatever everybody's comfortable with. Also, how a person handles a bill is a good indicator of what kind of person they are too, because like the people I've gone on dates with who, you know, were demanding about the way the bill was split or not split were not great people, right? Like those people were not fantastic humans. So it can be how a person handles when the bill comes can be a good indicator of what kind of person they are. But yeah, I typically, when I've gone on dates with people, I've just paid for my things, they've paid for their things. There have been some exceptions, like I've dated a few people who I knew made a lot less money than me.
Mhm.
And in those situations, you know, I like going to like nicer places. And I know that like those people probably couldn't have like afforded the places I wanted to go. In which case, my logic was that like, I would like to go to this nice place with you. I am willing to pay for it because I would like you to be there. So like it is my thing. I will pay for it. And that's also a philosophy I've taken on some dates is like whoever decided on the activity should pay for it. So like
Mhm.
if I want to go to the zoo, I will pay for our tickets to the zoo. If you want to go to the aquarium, you will pay for the ticket to the aquarium. Like whoever like wants to do the thing. But then you get into issues of like if one person plans things more often, they would also end up paying for things more often. So you can't totally do that all the time. I don't know. It's a tricky thing. I agree. It was a lot simpler when we had the men just pay for everything, but it was also a super not fair system. So yeah, it depends on who you're with and what their preference is.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been in that situation yet. As someone who is very cheap, I feel like I would tend to default to be like, if they were like, "Oh, I'll pay," I'll be like, "Yeah, sure, fine," because
Yeah,
like
no, that's what
I
I
don't
did.
like paying for things, but I also feel like there's some part of me that's like, "No, Jen, like you have to pay to fight the patriarchy. I'd be like, fine, I'll pay to pay the fucking
It well, it
patriarchy.
depends on the person's preferences. Well, and some women argue, and I think there is some merit to this argument, that, like, men paying is probably rooted in the patriarchy, but also women to this day get paid less than men and like experience oppression and like all this shit we go through. So like I'm not above being like, yeah, you're the man, you have the privilege, you're fucking paying for this shit. Like I do think there's some merit to that argument of like men should pay because they have a fuck ton of privilege and like you owe us. Like I'm not against that line of thinking.
Yeah, I remember I had a conversation with dad once where he was like, when he was young and single and very wealthy, he was like, going on a lot of dates, and he was like, I would take these girls out to nice dates, get like lobster, and then like we wouldn't have a second date. And he was like, so after a while of that, I was just like, fuck, I'll just take him to McDonald's, and if it gets to the second date, then we can do something cool. So there's that
Right.
philosophy too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just gonna vary by the person, and you just gotta have conversations about it and see what you're comfortable with. And here's the thing too: is some people won't make their wishes clear, and then they'll get mad about it later, and those people are shitty, and you should walk away from them. Like there are men I've had who have like offered to pay, and I've accepted, and then later held it over my head, and I'm like, you offered, you don't get to be like I owe you because you offered to do that. So nope, nope, that's not a thing. How a person handles the bill says a lot about them, in my opinion.
In the presentation about first dates, they also talked about like things you shouldn't do on a first date. And they talked about one thing was like, yeah, be on time. And I remember you telling me one time you like tried to meet up with
Oh,
this one guy like multiple times or something, and he like canceled and then he was late. So
I've had, oh my God, punctuality has been such an. So I am a very punctual person, and so are you. So
yes.
I know this bothers
I
you
think
also.
it's because dad is the least punctual person and he gave me so much
Drives me
anxiety
crazy.
never being on time to
Mhm.
anything. Anyway.
Yep, 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 yep. So yeah, I had the one story that sticks out in my mind is I met this guy who everything about him was wonderful. He was cute. He was a computer engineer. He was from another country. He had an accent which was super sexy. He was everything. He asked me out to a dinner date and I said yes. And I showed up at the restaurant 5 minutes early because that's who I am. He showed up 20 minutes late. So I sat in the restaurant for 25 minutes by myself. It was awkward as hell. When he showed up, finally, he apologized for being late, but offered no explanation. He was like, "Oh, sorry, I'm late," and just sat down. And I was like, "You're not gonna. What happened? Like, you are 20 minutes past when we were gonna meet. What happened? Did your cat die? Like, where were you?" But he offered no explanation. But again, he was everything. So I did give him a second chance, and we went to a movie together. And for the movie, he also showed up 10 minutes late, and we missed the beginning of the movie. And I was like, nope, this is it. Never went on another date with him. I was like, I can't. Nope, this is lifestyles are not compatible. This is not going to work. You're going to drive me crazy. Nope.
Probably the datiest date I've went on is I think on Tinder. I like when I was in Barcelona, I like downloaded Tinder to like try to get to meet people, but I too late turned it to like just women, which I should have done from the beginning. So I just got
Always.
messages from a
Yes.
bunch of men, and I went out with this guy who was super sweet and like actually like a nice guy, but I was not attracted to him. And I don't even know why I did it, because like I wasn't looking to date. Like I was leaving in 2 months. And so we went on this date, and I think we just like sat down at like a cafe and like got beers. And I think we played Two Truths and a Lie in Spanish, which was difficult at some points. And then at the end of the date, he like walked me home, which I was also kind of like, I don't super want you to know where I live. But
Where
like
I
every time
live.
I turned, he
Yeah.
was like, oh, I'll just go this way too. And I was like, okay, well, fine. So that was awkward. I
Yay.
don't remember who paid on that date at all, but yeah, that's pretty much the only date I've ever gone
Yeah.
on.
I had I don't know why this made me think well, I do know why it made me think of it, but I don't know if I should talk about it. But I'm gonna. So I sorta kinda had a sugar daddy for a little while. You know who I'm talking about. So I had a guy who was over a decade older than me, who right when I graduated college just like wanted to buy me things. And like I knew like I was a very empowered, educated young woman and like I was very skeptical at first. Like I remember the first time he asked me to lunch and he offered to pay. I was like, okay, but like we're clear that like this is not like this is platonic. I'm not we're not doing anything. And he was like, yeah, no. He's like, I like fancy restaurants. I know you're fresh out of college and you're still paying off student loans. Like, I want to go to fancy restaurants and I enjoy your company. So like, I'm happy to pay. And I was like, okay, if you say so. And so I was very dubious going in, and I set, hard boundaries, and I think I was smart about it. But yeah, we never slept together. There was never anything romantic. Like, he genuinely just like had a lot of money and enjoyed my company, but he paid for a lot of my shit over the course of like 3 years. It was honestly a really good learning experience for me in generosity, because a lot of the lessons he taught me, I've adopted in my own life. So one of them was, when he would take me with him on vacations, he would pay for everything as if he had gone on the vacation himself, and then I would just pay for like the extra costs, right? So he would be like, if I did this vacation on my own, I would have paid for, the hotel room, regardless of if there was another person there or not. So he would not have me contribute to the hotel room. If we would go on driving trips, he would be like, if I did this by myself, I would have paid all the gas money. So he didn't expect me to contribute to gas. So like, I would like buy my own meals on those things sometimes, although not always, because sometimes he would just buy those too. But yeah, that was his philosophy when he took me on trips, was like, I would just kind of pay the marginal extra cost for me to go, which was way cheaper than what I would have paid if I was going on the trip, right? And I really like that philosophy, because it did stem from the mentality that he was like, I want to go out and do things, and I would also like you to be there. And so financially, if you take that idea and apply it to money.
Well, yes, but he also was a very financially stable individual, so.
True. No, 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 absolutely. Yeah, no, he had the money is the other thing. But he never made me feel bad about it, right? Like, he never made it like, I have more money than you, I'm more powerful than you. So I really liked like his attitude. And I've kind of adopted that in my own life, because I now am very financially secure and have a lot of money, and similarly like to travel. So like, I don't know if I ever actually told you this, but when we went on the Texas trip, the attitude is what I did for you. So like, I didn't have you pay for anything that I wouldn't have paid for if I was going just myself. So like, I think you really only paid for like your meals on the trip. And that was about like, if I had done the trip by myself, I would have paid for the hotel room, for the camping stuff, for the permits, for the gas, whatever. So I just had you pay like the extra cost, which, I mean, in my mind, like, that makes sense, because like, I wanted to do that trip myself, but I also wanted you to come. So like, why would I make you pay for me to go? Like, I would have done it whether you were there or not, but I wanted you there. So like, why would I make you pay extra money? I don't know. I liked the philosophy. I learned things from my sugar daddy that I've adopted into my own life, and I think it's been good. I don't know if sugar daddy is even the right word, because I know sugar daddy has the connotation of like, typically you sleep with them, and there was never
I
anything
mean,
romantic.
not
But
inherently, I don't know. Leah and I were actually talking about that the other day, because me and my existential crisis of searching for a job and hating capitalism, I'm like, I am an empowered female individual, but like, also, if somebody just wanted to pay for all of my stuff, that's cool too.
yeah, yep, yep, yep.
And
And I think,
it doesn't even have to be
that's
a man.
valid.
It doesn't have to be a man. Like,
Yeah,
anyone,
no, for sure.
anyone, sugar
For
parent.
sure. Yeah, no, sugar parent, absolutely. And I honestly, so when my sugar daddy was being my sugar daddy, again, he never made me feel bad about it. But I did always like, I would every now and then be like, oh my God, this guy does so much for me. Like, I don't deserve this. Meh. And now that I'm kind of in his position in several of my relationships, right? Because my salary jumped very quickly in a way that I did not expect. And I have a lot of friends who also make decent money, but like, not a ton. So I'm kind of in the position with a lot of my friends that my sugar daddy was in with me. And now that I'm here, I feel like I have a better understanding of why he did what he did for me, because like, I also have the attitude of like, I have this money and I want to do things with it, and I want to do those things with these people, and if they can't afford it, I am happy to pay for it. Like, they don't owe me, I don't want them to pay me back. Like, it's just, I want to do this thing and I want to do it with you, and like, I have the money to do it, and I don't need you to contribute financially. I just want to do the thing with you. I don't know. I feel like I understand him a lot better now that I am in the position of financial privilege. And yeah, so in some, sugar parents are great if you do it right. There are wrong ways to be a sugar parent. Like, there are definitely, like, when the term sugar daddy originated, I think it was definitely like an abuse of power situation where like, men would take advantage of financially dependent women. But I think there are consensual good ways to do it now, and I think I was very fortunate to have a very good sugar daddy, and I am hopefully now becoming a very good sugar mama to a lot of my babies.
This doesn't really transition into any the other things I had on my list, but Leah said something. I don't know how much you ascribe to like attachment styles,
I've
secure
heard of them.
versus avoidant. I don't know them super well. I don't know the research on them. I've never, yeah, I don't know. They're just not my thing. But Leah
I can look them up.
identifies as, there are like two avoidant types, and she identifies as one of them. And her friend Chuck identifies as like the other avoidant type, and I, from what I know of them, identify as secure. But so Leah and Chuck are both avoidant types, which I think is why they get along so well. But so we were having this conversation, and Leah was like, I talked to Chuck, and he supports me on, my philosophy of not having open, honest communication because the person who, you're wanting to be honest and open, that could make them feel uncomfortable. And I was like, this is some avoidant bullshit, because I was like, because I heard this phrase after we had this conversation. I heard this phrase where it said honesty over harmony. And she like, it can be more harmonious in the short term if you like tell a white lie or, like pretend. And like, I'm not saying you need honest, open, complete truth communication with every single person in your life. Like, you can be nice and tell white lies
Yeah.
to strangers or people you're not really close to, but like in your most important relationships, like I am going to go to my
Yeah.
grave on advocating for honest, open communication. And her and Chuck's
Well,
point was like, what if being honest and open makes the other person feel awkward? I was like, then you gotta just break through the awkwardness, pal. Like, I may not be in the right, but that is my philosophy. My philosophy is truth. I don't know.
so, okay, so this is interesting because I had a situation recently with Rick, and I won't say what it is, but I had a piece of information that I knew, and I was going to tell Rick it eventually. I was going to tell him after we had finished our vacation because it literally was not going to affect anything on the trip. So I was like, I might as well give him a few days before I give him this piece of information. But then I decided, I was like, I don't know what he wants because maybe he would want to know this. So the thing I decided, and I think this was the right decision, is I asked him the question, just the general question: would you rather be blissfully ignorant or know things that might hurt you and won't necessarily do you any good to know? Like there's not any benefit to you knowing, but like would you still rather know? And he said he would rather know, so I ended up telling him the piece of information. But if he had gone the opposite way and said like, yeah, if there's no reason for me to know, I don't need to know, then don't tell me, then I would have waited till the end of the trip. And I think that's valid because I was thinking about after I did that, if he had asked me the same question, I think what I would have said is the opposite answer. And like if there is a piece of information that like truly gives me no benefit to know, like there's nothing I can do about it, it doesn't help me in any way to know, and I can't help anyone else by knowing it, like there is no good that could come of me knowing it, it will only bring me pain, I would rather not know it. Like that's a me thing. And I think it's rare those situation happens because I think oftentimes there are things you may not want to know that will hurt you, but it's still good to know them because you can do good with them. Like knowing about racism, right? Sucks. Not fun for me. I hate being aware that racism is real, but it's a good thing for me to know because it helps me like be able to fight against it. So I think it is rare that pieces of information exist where there actually is no benefit to you knowing. But in my opinion, if there was something that like me knowing it would only hurt me and I wouldn't be able to do anything good with the information, I would rather be blissfully ignorant. Like that's me, that's my philosophy.
Yeah.
Rick had the opposite one, so I ended up telling him, but like I think knowing things like that about your partners or lovers or friends or whatever will help you know how to communicate with them more effectively. Because I think Leah has a point that like yeah, for some people being open and honest all the time might make them uncomfortable and may not be the best for the relationship.
Well, so I think there's a difference. There's a difference between asking someone and what do you prefer. And if she asked me what I prefer, I want her to tell me everything, but her thing is she doesn't like telling it. But also
Oh,
your thing is if this piece of information does not impact you in any way, and the stuff that she withhold we could address and everybody would be better off.
that's kind of my point, is there are rarely pieces of information that won't do you good to know. Like most of the
Yes.
time it is good to know the information. It is very rare that there's actually information where it's like there's actually no good in you knowing this, but it does occasionally happen, but it's rare.
Yeah. Yeah, so here's my thing. It's like, okay, so here's two stories. One story, she just happened today. She was like, I made veggie lasagna one time and I didn't cook the noodles because that's how dad makes lasagna. She asked me today. She's like, "So, if you
Mhm.
make the lasagna again, are you going to cook the noodles?" And I was like, "I don't know." And she's like, "Well, when will you know?" I was like, "I don't know. Why?" And she's like, "Well, I don't know. I had to like badger her for 10 minutes to get her to say that she wanted me to cook the noodles." And I was like, "Leah, I can cook the noodles. Just tell me if you want me to cook the noodles." So that's the shit I'm talking about. That's the fucking shit I'm
Yeah, no,
talking about that I just want her
yeah.
to say it. But my second story is one time Danny came over like in the last semester and we weren't really hanging out with Sarah because she was on her college campus and she was like interacting with a lot of people and we didn't feel safe. Oh, and when he came over, Sarah was actually in quarantine because she had been like confirmed exposed to it. He came over to visit me, like, and we were hanging out, but he was like, I don't want to, we weren't going to invite Sarah anyway because A, she was in quarantine, she couldn't come. So he came to visit me, but we didn't tell Sarah that he was over because he thought it would make her sad that she couldn't see him because she was in quarantine. So like it was dumb because it's like she cannot see you because she's in quarantine. But he's like, no, she'll be sad if she knows I'm here. So we like hung out, and then while he was over, Sarah called him, and he ignored the first call, and then was like, "Oh, now I feel bad." And I was like, "Well, just go sit in your car so she can't tell where you are." And he was like, "Yeah." So then he went, and he was gone for like 2 hours, and I was just sitting there like, "Well, this sucks because now I'm just sitting here alone." And so then he came back, and I was like, "Did you like tell her?" And he was like, "No, and make sure your family doesn't tell her that I was here." And so like he was trying to protect her feelings, but like I think it just would have been easier if we had all been honest with each other, and like maybe that would have been time to have a conversation to have like, would you, maybe that would have been the time to be like, would you, one piece of information that if you can't do anything that would hurt you. So
Yeah.
maybe everybody should just have those kinds of conversations.
That's what I was gonna say is, yeah. So the only reason that I think Danny was actually right in that situation, that like, yeah, he couldn't see Sarah, so there was no good in Sarah knowing that he was there because it would just make her sad. So like the only if she hadn't called, he would have been right, I think, and it would have been better for her just not to know that he'd been there because it would have only stood to make her sad. However, when she called, I think that's the time where he could have been like, "Hey, ask the general question of like, if there was a piece of information that would only make you sad, would you still want to know it?" And then if she said yes, then he could be like, "All right, I'm here with Jen. Let's all just talk, the three of us." I
Yeah.
do think it's odd that he didn't just make an excuse not to talk to her since he was hanging out with you, but
Well,
like,
he felt
I
bad
get
because she
it.
was in quarantine and he was like, "She's lonely. I
Yeah.
feel bad." And so, like,
Yeah.
I was kind of pissed at first because I was like, he like abandoned me and I was over at our house instead of the house with my friends. So I didn't have my laptop and I was like, I can't do anything while I'm here. And he didn't tell me when he was coming back. And I did recognize,
Right.
being Polly, I was like, this is a good exercise for me to examine myself. And I was like, I'm a very structured person. And so the fact that this is like unstructured and I don't feel productive, like, this is why I'm feeling upset. Danny is just trying to be a
Mhm.
good friend to both of us, and it's kind of a shitty situation. So I wasn't mad at him. Like, I got it. It just was a shitty situation. And I was thinking, I was like, he should just ask her so he just stops feeling so bad about it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I agree that I think I will agree that like you should just have a conversation with people where it's like, would you want to know if there's a piece of information that would make you feel sad, but you can't do anything about. But in every other
Yeah.
situation, I advocate for open, honest communication because it is just the best way to reach optimal.
So this also goes along with this thing I've learned about recently, which is ask culture versus guess culture. And I don't remember if I've talked to you about this
Mm.
yet. But so you and I are both very, very ask culture, which means in our minds, if you want something, ask for it. Like literally anything, just ask. And like the key part of ask culture is for it to work. No has to be an acceptable option, right?
Mhm.
And for both of us, it is. Like, if we ask for something and people say no, we're like, all right, cool, move on, whatever. However, for a lot of people, they were raised and are most comfortable in what is called guess culture, where you do not ask for anything unless you know the answer is already yes, because the idea of saying no is just mortifying. So you kind of live in this guess land where you'll kind of like edge around questions or kind of hint at things. And a lot of people, I'm giving a very biased account of this again because we're both ask culture people, but I think ask culture is far superior and more effective than guest culture. But a lot of people have arguments for why guest culture is valid too, and that's fine. But I think a lot of your interactions with Leah and Danny also have to do with the fact that we are very ask culture people and other people are very, very guest culture.
Yeah, and I do know that like Leah had a bit of a rougher childhood growing up, and so I think that's probably why she kind of has more avoidant and more guessing tendencies. But it also made me remember, I think just in poly stuff I've read in kind of our culture, there's this idea that like your partner should be like a mind reader, and like if your partner
Hmm.
actually cares about you, like they'll just know. And like there is validity that like as you spend time with someone and if they do pay attention to you, then there is stuff they will learn about you and be able to anticipate. But like we have such high expectations for how people like we imagine that our partner should just instantly know and we shouldn't have to ask. And I think it was in, oh god, it was in a book I listened to recently, but it's like we revert to this state where like I don't know if I ascribed to fully to this theory, but their theory was like we kind of put our partners in our caretaker role and we kind of revert back to when we were like infants and like our parents just kind of anticipated our needs and we couldn't talk and so they just figured it out, and we kind of revert back to that with our primary partner or just close intimate partners. And it's like that's such an unrealistic expectation. Just fucking ask for what you want, and it's not a crime if
Yeah.
the other person can't read your mind. Like humans aren't mind
Hmm.
readers, and it just drives me insane. Like
Yeah.
Leah and I
Yeah.
will not argue about this, but like discuss this intently all the time where I'm like, just fucking tell me what you want.
Yeah. And I think that's another, speaking of like high level questions it's good to have with your partners and just like your friends and stuff too. I think it's important to establish early on that like we are ask culture people because it's not natural to everybody, but because I've had people get offended when I've asked them things. They're like, "How could you ask me that?" And I'm like, "You can say no. Like, I'm not going to be mad if you say no. It's not a big deal." And they're like, "But asking me puts me in such a weird position." And I'm like, "It doesn't have to. You can say yes or no. I will not. It's fine."
Yeah.
So I think it is good to establish early on in relationships, like if you're more assertive in that regard. Because yeah, I'm the same train of thought as you. Is like we should just be fucking open and honest and tell people our shit, and everything is easier. But that does not come naturally to a lot of people, and a lot of people will get offended initially at the idea of that. And so I think it's important to have conversations early on where you establish like this is who I am, this is how I
Yeah.
communicate. If it is jarring to you, tell me. But like this is how I
Yeah,
work.
and I mean, I think it is a cultural thing. And as I've said before, like, you don't have to be that way with every single person in your life because, like, people who you're not super
Hmm.
intimate with, like, it can be awkward where, like, if you ask something of someone, they may feel obligated to give it. But with people who you are very intimate and close with, like, maybe this is just me, but, like, I'm gonna go full ask. Like, I don't wanna guess. I don't wanna beat around the bush. Like, I don't want any of that game bullshit. Like, I'm just going in. Like, that's just it.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think being open and honest is just it's so much more efficient. Like you waste so much
Yes.
time trying to guess what people want, and it's just fucking tell them, you know? Like
Yeah.
it might be awkward, it might lead to some short-term uncomfortability, but like just tell them, you know?
Yeah. This is kind of related, but on the poly pages on Facebook, I was reading, and there was this thing that kept popping up where people were like, I need affirmation from my partner. Like, especially like in regards to like my partner's like going on a date, my partner is starting to date other people, like, I need affirmation from them. And this is
Mhm.
probably just a linguistical loophole, which I love to nitpick, but it's like, you don't need affirmation. Like, maybe you do. Like, maybe you can say, I need it in order to feel secure. But
Yes.
as I will say, security is an illusion. Security does not exist. I'm sorry. But what
It's
you,
a nice illusion
it
though. It's
is,
an
it is,
illusion
it
I
is, it is.
like.
But what I want to say is that you don't need affirmation. You need, like, when you say that, I feel like they're saying, I need communication. Because, like, it's not the partner's obligation to give you affirmation. Like, if the partner is feeling uncertain, then they should give you that. What they owe you is honesty and constant communication. Like, if you do need to be like, this person to start dating someone else, like, I need to know how they feel. Yes, your partner does owe you complete honesty and, you know, frequent updates. But I just don't like the phrasing of I need affirmation because, like, they're not guaranteed to give it to you. Maybe
Mhm.
they're going to say, yeah, no, I think I do feel closer with this partner and not you. And it's like, yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, I think I agree with your kind of higher level linguistics point of a lot of times people say I need XYZ full stop, and it's like there needs to be I'm doing this as I say it. There needs to be an ending to that phrase in order for it to make a correct point,
Yes.
right? Like if you say I need this full stop, it's like what does need mean? I need you to
Like, you're
unpack
not gonna
that. Like
die.
yeah, like you're what will happen if you do not have it, you know? So I do think we often, you know, cut those sentences short and we should say things more like I need this in order to feel this, and that makes more sense. That is more fully unpacked.
Yeah, this also reminded me, and I'm gonna have to look up the definition. So, relationship anarchy is a term I've heard before but never really investigated. It's a relationship philosophy that one of its main tenets being that all relationships, romantic and otherwise, shouldn't be bound by any rules not agreed upon by the involved parties. And so, that's just kind of a surface definition, but what it's made me think of is on the poly pages, and like people have like debunked this as like not healthy, but like people have been like, I need to be my partner's favorite, or I need to be special to them. And it's like a similar thing where it's like, well, it's just like the thing I love about polyamory, and this is just a me thing, but it's like your relationship should be what it is. And like it shouldn't be like restrained or constrained or try to fit in any kind of mold. Obviously, you know, with people who like really need financial security, or like if there's children involved, I understand that things get complicated, but it's like what attracts me about polyamory is that the relationship should be what it is. I'm going to treat you how I feel about you. Like I don't know, like if you're my primary partner, it's because I feel the strongest connection with you. It's not for any other reason or any other rules we have. It just is what it is. And I don't know if I'm saying that well, but that's just how I feel.
I agree. I think I talked a little bit more about how like part of why I like ENM is because there's less of a built-in script and more of it you get to like design yourself. And I really like the idea of like, you know, we together create the relationship that works for us and we're not just going by some predetermined social script. Like we decide what works for us and what makes us happy and what doesn't, and go from there.
Because it's like Leah and Danny are my two closest like friends at the moment, and like we don't have sexual relationships again at the moment, but it's like they're both very intimately close with me, and like even if I did start seeing someone else, or I found a friend with benefits to like have sex with, it's like they would still be very important to me, and just because I'm quote unquote romantically involved with
Hmm.
someone doesn't mean anything. Maybe that person could become more important to them, but it's like if it does, then it does. And like there's like you don't have control over how other people feel. That's just what I want to get at. You can't control other people.
I was reading an article about this woman who she had a best friend and she had dated a guy who the guy had said, if we're going to be in a romantic relationship, I need to be prioritized above your best friend. And she had said, okay. And they had done that and she was miserable. And so, in all of her relationships going forward, the first thing she would tell her new partner is, this is my best friend. She is my number one. And I need you to know that. Like, I will date you, I will be romantic with you, whatever. But this woman, who is my platonic friend, is my first priority and she outranks you. And while, again, I don't love the idea of hierarchies and ranking, I think that is like, she was so close to the concept of polyamory. She wasn't, but she was so close in the articles to the concept of polyamory. But yeah, for her, she was like, my platonic relationship with this woman is a higher priority and is more important to me than my romantic partnerships. And that's such a taboo thing, which like I think this is part of what we complain about on this podcast a lot of the time too, is like romantic relationships are great, sex is great, it's wonderful, but I hate that like it's the end all be all. Like it's what everybody cares about. Like the fairy tale ending is when you get married. Like the most important relationship is the romantic one. And it's like, what about the best friend character that was there the whole time? Like why was that not the end all be all? Like that's a better relationship a lot of the times than this romantic thing that's the happy ending to the movie, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I've said, like when we like they were just talking. I don't know what they were citing, but they were like when we lived in these more tribal nomadic structures, you spent most of your time with like people of your same gender, and like you maybe reproduced with other people, and like you know they brought in one partner brought in the food, the other people like watched the kids, but like people spent most of their time and formed very deep relationships with people of the same gender in like platonic ways. Romance wasn't a concept, like as I've said, like sex was just such a different concept, and like romance and relationship structures were just so different. And it's like, yeah, like if a romantic relationship isn't your number one and isn't the end all be all, like that's totally fine.
Yup.
Yep.
Yup.
Yep.
Yup.
Yep.
Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, subscribe and leave us a review on your podcast app.
If you really like us, like us, send this episode to a friend, family member, partner, your boss, anyone else in your social circle, the people you want to convert to polyamory. Start a conversation.
Feel free to send us any comments or questions over social media.
So, thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.